Welcome back to Girl Talk. We are discussing self-love and how to love yourself in a healthy way. So we finished off with discussing arrogance and being self-confident and the difference between the two, but we're going to go ahead and just discuss that a little bit further. That way our viewers can have a deeper understanding of the difference between the two, because there's a very fine line and we want to make sure we don't cross that line. So have you experienced someone who's been arrogant in your life? It doesn't have to be obviously a family member. Let's not talk about family. But have you experienced someone who came across as being like very arrogant, and were you able to detect that that person was being arrogant?
I mean, okay, so I think arrogance comes off as a know-it-all, like I am perfect, I have no sins, and not even the sins, but like weaknesses. Like that person even may acknowledge that, I sin because I'm human, but I think I figured out a way where I'm perfect, where I don't hurt others, and kind of that person just walks blindly. And a lot of times, like, an arrogant person doesn't know that he or she is arrogant, because sometimes it's linked where an arrogant person just doesn't listen to what other people tell him or try to correct him. But at the same time, we have to be careful, because I think I can fall into arrogance in times where I'm hurt. And like you said earlier, it kind of is a defense mechanism. I feel like no one is listening to me, so I feel like I have to vocalize my, the greatness that I think I am. So I think it does come out of hurt as well. So I think you can detect it in that way, where you but you'll see a person who is really hurt deep inside, but they are always like presenting themselves and like, I got it all under control. But I still think that person means well. They may not know, they may not know any better or how to deal with their hurt. So, yeah.
Would you have the courage to point it out in them?
I don't know. How do you think someone should approach someone who comes off that way?
Well, I think first it probably depends on the relationship you have with the person. If it's a really, really good friend, I would think that it's on you to gently point it out to them, because that's the difference between being tolerant and actually loving someone. In today's society, we've become so tolerant because we don't want to take the risk of confronting someone. And I'm not speaking confronting like a person in a mean, tough, angry way. But if you genuinely care about that person, it's just to, mention it to them. But of course, it would have to be done with gentleness and with love. And it also depends on the relationship you have with the person.
Right.
What about self-confidence? What does that look like to you?
So everyone was, always comparing themselves to one another. And I think something that girls especially struggle with is noticing when other girls are confident in themselves. And then I don't know if anyone else has experienced this, but sometimes I think even if a girl is confident, we tend to view them as arrogant, and then we want to tear them down. And something that I read about is people who tend to have like unstable, high self-esteem, which sounds kind of contradictory, but it's like a psychological thing. Even if they think so highly of themselves, it's actually a lot of it is rooted in insecurity, and they don't take criticism well, and they actually have a tendency to react in very violent, volatile ways. And I think that's so important. Is just because you have high self-esteem doesn't mean that you are stable and that you are secure. And I think we need to make sure that we can have stable confidence in ourselves, so that when we look at someone else who is okay with herself, that we aren't constantly like, oh, she's like really not that great. And instead of tearing her down, we're like, oh, it's really great that she's able to embrace herself. Because girls spend a lot of the time tearing each other down and wanting to feel the way someone else feels, but that doesn't help anyone. We're supposed to be supportive of one another. We're supposed to embrace one another and ourselves. And, we have such a great gift of just being a woman. We can tolerate pain and, do really great things despite the odds. So it's important. And I think that would also contribute to us being good friends,
Right. Yeah, honestly, for me in my experience, So I play travel soccer, and a lot of my life I was constantly comparing myself to other girls on the team, saying like, I'm not good enough, like I wish I was as good as them, like they scored how many goals, they had the coach's attention, like, and I was constantly like degrading myself in like the hopes of like, wait, I need to get better, like constantly pushing myself. Like some of my friends, like if they asked to hang out, I'd be like, no, sorry, like I have to play soccer, like, and it was constantly, that was like a huge part of my life. And it wasn't until a championship game, and like it was the last 2 minutes and we were tied, and I had the ball and I was going towards the goal, and I was like, okay, like this is my time to like score a goal. And my teammate was yelling like, pass, pass, and I decided to take it, and I missed the shot. And in the last 2 minutes, they got the ball and they scored on us. And my entire team looked at me like they were so angry, and I was like, because I was like being selfish and I wanted for myself. And it wasn't until then that I started to realize that, like, first of all, soccer is a team sport, and I shouldn't be comparing myself to the team. I should be thinking about how I can work with my team. So
Yeah, that's huge.
No, I'm glad you shared that, because I think that's what prevents us from seeing how God created us, is when we start comparing ourselves to other people and we lose confidence in ourselves. However, if we have a healthy level of confidence in who we are because of who created us and why He created us, we would never be jealous of someone else. I mean, of course, we're weak and we're sinners, but we wouldn't be tempted to be jealous of someone else. We wouldn't be tempted to put another girl down. And that to me is an indication of someone who truly is a self-confident woman, is someone who doesn't need to put someone else down to make herself look better.
Right.
You know, someone who actually celebrates her friend's victories, even if she didn't get it. That to me is someone who's self-confident, someone who knows she's weak and needs improvement, but does it in a way where she doesn't put herself down. She's just willing to take constructive criticism and be open to that.
Right.
So I think we had a great discussion today. This concludes our episode for Girl Talk today. Thank you for joining us.